Guess who's back? Back again. Mondo's back from vacation. How you doing, Albert?
I'm doing good, Armando. How you doing?
Pretty good. Thanks for being here. For those that are tuning in to the live show, welcome to the Real Life on the Bass Kayak and Beers podcast. I got a guest host for today. I got Albert Rocks. By the way, coolest. You should have put like apostrophe S at the end of your last name, Albert. Be Albert Rocks. I'll be cool.
uh, that I was going to say that's not the first time I've heard that, and it's definitely not the last.
But anyways, Albert, thank you for coming in as a guest host. We're gonna have Jacob Moeller, aka Jake the Snake. We're gonna be talking about the big win at the Lonestar Throwdown. But before we start talking about that, again, and for those out there watching on the live show, if you have questions for our guests, for either Albert or for me, please put it in the comment section. We'll do our best to get those questions answered. Let's talk a little bit about a few of the things that were going on this weekend. First of all, congratulations to Russ Snyder, AOY winner for the Bassmaster Kayak Series. That ended this weekend with the last event being at the Susquehanna River. And Russ Snyder ended up in second place, which is good enough for the AOY win. So congratulations. Big congratulations to Josh Shrenko from the Smalley podcast. He actually won the tournament, got first place. So congratulations to Josh Shrenko. Super happy to see him. I think it's only fitting that he wins. I don't know if you're familiar with Smalley Talk and the Achi brand for smallmouth bass. I think Josh Shrenko has really is his brand is the biggest brand in smallmouth bass fishing, I think. So it's only fitting that he actually won that tournament. So were you able to have you heard about Achi brand and the Smalley Talk podcast, Albert?
Honestly, I haven't, but that's one I need to check out then.
Yeah, no, it's a really good podcast. And again, Josh Rinko just won that. So congratulations. Also, big shout out to the Texas Bass Nation. Let me actually share the screen on this. Texas Bass Nation Kayak Series, the classic, I think is what they call it. Dale Griffin won the tournament. This was held in conjunction with the Lone Star Throwdown. Dale Griffin won 87 and 3/4. Guillermo Gonzalez, 87 and 3/4 as well. He came in second. His the tiebreaker was Dale Griffin had the biggest bass between both of them. So he gets first place. Guillermo Gonzalez gets second. Philip Wyatt, 85 and 3/4. Jordan Rosenblum, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, came in fourth, 82 and a half. And Jeff Isham, 82 and a half as well. His biggest bass was smaller than Jordan Rosenblum. That's why he got fifth place. But all five of them get to punch their ticket for the Bassmaster Kayak Series Championship at 10 Kilo in Oklahoma. And big shout out to Texas Bass Nation. They're paying for their entry fee. They're paying for their hotels. So that's big. In the past, I know I have been kind of critical with Texas Bass Nation when they wanted to start their kayak series. I felt like they weren't all in. It was kind of like a half-hearted attempt to bring the kayak series to Texas Bass Nation, but they stepped up by paying the entry fees and the hotels for the top 5 anglers. That's big. I know this next year, Duke Tran is going to be running the Texas Bass Nation Kayak Series. I'm looking forward to that. Have you heard about that, Albert? Are you looking forward to taking part in one of those tournaments?
Yes, I'm definitely looking forward to it. Hopefully, I'm able to attend a few of the. I believe they have 2 in the central part of Texas that hopefully I can partake in, and fingers crossed, maybe do well.
Yeah, they have. I think it's going to be 2 in the North Texas, 2 in the Central Texas area, and then 2 in the South, if I remember correctly what Duke Tran said on the podcast when he was here a couple of weeks ago. But yeah, I'm excited to see, especially now with Steve Owens running the Bassmaster Kayak Series. I mean, it's I think it's everyone's dream that grew up bass fishing to be in the, walk that red carpet, being the top 10, whether you're on a boat or on a kayak for the Bassmaster Kayak Series. Like all of us that grew up watching since we were little, watching Bassmasters Elite and all of their tournaments televised. I can't even remember the channel. I think it was, I don't know if back then it was Fox Sports or ESPN or whatever it was, but
I
man, it's exciting. It's exciting time to be
yeah.
a kayak angler.
Oh yeah, it definitely is. And I think to add a little bit to that is I think when I was a young kid, I think it was the Nashville Network. At least that's what I remember from
Could have
my
been, yeah.
my standpoint.
I lived in Puerto Rico, so I got it through cable TV. I can't even remember what channel it was on. What, probably something like ESPN or something. But yeah, man, exciting. So that I mean, again, congratulations to everybody that qualified. Let's bring in our guest for the day to talk about the Lone Star Throwdown, Mr. Jake the Snake, Jacob Moeller. Congratulations, man. Thank you for coming to the show, man.
Thank you. Appreciate y'all having me on.
Jacob, we were
Congratulations
talking.
again, Jacob.
What? I'm sorry, I
Thank you,
interrupted you.
Albert. Appreciate
Uh,
it.
we were talking about the pre-recording. I remember about 4 years ago when I started kayak fishing, I was looking into the KBF monthly tournaments, and I saw somebody with a huge, ridiculous bag to win first place here in Texas. It was like 121 inches. And that's when I kind of started with social media and Instagram, and I'm like, yeah, man, let me look up this guy, Jacob Muller, to see who it is. Where is he from? Maybe I can fish one day with him and kind of learn, because I was eager to learn all things kayak fishing. And I see this built up buff guy's like, is this Arnold Schwarzenegger's Instagram account? I was like, I really thought it was somebody else's account. It's like, oh, I guess the real Jacob Muller doesn't have a social media account, but turns out it was you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I
So you
appreciate
still
the kind words.
are you still into bodybuilding, Jacob?
Not competitive, but I lift like I'm trying to, so to speak.
The cool thing about that, the cool thing about having that as your Instagram profile, I bet no everybody that knows you is not gonna run into your spot. Like nobody's gonna mess with you
I
when they
hope
look at your
not. I
Instagram.
hope not. I tell you what, it does help me though in the long run, like being more fit in the kayak. I feel like it helps you balance more. It helps you make longer runs, all those types of things, especially when you're using your manpower a lot, and um, especially in the Hobie tournaments, recently, I feel like it gave me an advantage getting to my spots.
When did you started like bodybuilding, and when did I'm assuming when did kayak fishing took over as your number one hobby
Right.
over
Well, I grew up
bodybuilding?
around bass fishing. Both my parents were tournament anglers before I was born, so I grew up with it real close to me, and was fortunate to have families that had lake houses, so I had access to the water at an early age. So grew up doing it, but it was very much so recreational, and school and sports and all of that took the primary focus. And so, gosh, when baseball was over in college, I kind of wanted to continue competing in something, and bodybuilding just seemed to be kind of natural for me. And that was kind of my main focus from my late teens to like mid 20s, and kind of developed a little knee injury, and I needed to take a break from lifting. And my brother was deployed in Afghanistan. He left his kayak back, and I took it out and started kayaking, and fell in love with it. And long story short, I bought a kayak, the Awesome Canoe and Kayak, and my good buddy Tyler Howe told me about cats, and I started tournament fishing in 2016, and it's been a blur ever since.
What was your kayak that your brother left behind
The
that you were
first
using?
one,
Yeah.
the first kayak that I bought was a lure by Feel Free. It was 11 and a half, and I competed that whole year in cats in 2016, and I made that year they had an elite series event. Instead of one classic, they had three, and they that three events, and they put them all together as a classic. And um, after I think the second event on Fork, we had a lot of conditions to deal with, a lot of wind, and And when we came back the next week for the tournament, I had purchased a PA myself, and because it was just I saw my buddies being able to pedal in rough conditions. I mean, all year I ate a lot of humble pie to anglers that had pedal driven kayaks, and so you can cover water, you can fish more hands free, um, and yeah, it was just so much more efficient and safe too in big water. So I made that switch, and then the next year I got on the Hobie fishing team through ACK, and I stayed on and all the way until 2021, and we've just had a lot of good momentum rolling throughout the years. And the last 2 years have been a lot of fun. Yes, sir.
I I know my dad, who's always all my life he's been in the gym. Right now he's in his late 70s, so he doesn't go to the gym anymore. But he's like religiously would go to the gym, and
Yes,
I
sir.
every once in a while, like I would get spiritual, like all right, summer New Year's resolution. I'll go at the beginning of the year. By March, February, I was already like I would get bored of it. So, but I know watching from my dad takes a lot of discipline and mental fortitude to
Yes, sir.
just to keep chugging and being consistent at it. Other than the physical aspect of the stamina and the strength that obviously helps you with the physical sport like kayak fishing, mentally and emotionally, is there any comparisons or anything that you brought in from your training as a bodybuilder that kind of helps you mentally with kayak fishing as far as maybe being patient or resilient?
Definitely, yes, and just being very driven and not allowing anything just get in your way, and I mean, gosh, just being strong, being mentally strong. I mean, just yeah, putting yourself through a lot of physical abuse in the gym over the years. I feel like when we get put into these really tough conditions with lots of wind and waves and boats, and we've got to think, and I feel like training very intensely. I train balls to the wall when I weight train. I feel like putting yourself through that all the time, it makes all these decisions a little easier. Obviously, experience on time on the water is what really gives you the advantage, but having that just like strong desire in you to put your head down and grind. The other day was one of those events where you needed to do that and just grind for those bites, because that lull in the middle of the day made it really tough for everybody, and myself included.
Yeah.
I can definitely vouch for that too.
So let's talk a little.
Remember,
let's
like about 10 o'clock the other day, it got rough,
let's talk
real
a little
rough.
bit about the. Let's start with the pre-fishing. Like, let's get to the
Sure,
meat and potatoes of how you got to winning the tournament. So, how many days of pre-fishing did you do?
just Friday.
Friday. Albert,
Friday.
you did how many days of pre-fishing?
I got in. I got up to the lake Wednesday evening, but I started pre-fishing Thursday, and it was tough. It
How
was
was
tough.
pre-fishing for both of you? Like Albert, you mentioned it was tough. Jacob, how was it for you?
It was pretty good. I shook a lot of fish off. I had a good shallow dock pattern going. Um, but I doubted that it would be like that the following day. I really did. Um, we had similar conditions here in Canyon Lake, Texas, the day before Thursday. Thursday was really good. Thursday we had a ton of overcast. Low pressure system came through. It fished really good. I had to get on Canyon real quick to basically go over some things with Garmin with my live scope transducer. So I was on the water anyway, and I'm here at my house, and I made a few casts, and I caught a couple really nice fish on top water. And I talked to one of my buddies who lives up there, and Thursday they had the same exact conditions. So Friday I get there, and those conditions are gone. South wind was still ripping through, but we had lots of sun, a very bluebirdy type day. But the front hadn't hit yet, and we did have the moon out, so I didn't feel like that was really helping us. But the bites were there on Friday; they were. I had an 18. I set the hook on the first fish in the morning. It was 18 inches. I didn't set the hook on another one after that. I had two that I couldn't shake them off. They started wrapping themselves up, so I drug them out, and they were like 17 and 3/4. And then there were like another, I don't know, 10 to 15 that I was successfully able to shake off. And I was feeling good. I was feeling good, but I knew it probably wasn't going to be like that, just by looking at the change in the weather, the change in the wind, um, the drop in temperature, the
Yeah.
pressure. That I've got to reiterate that. 100 and however many collegiate boat tournament, a his and hers boat tournament,
Yeah.
130-ish kayak anglers, everybody pre-fishing. You know, and then you throw all these conditions in. Um, I think it really changed the way that it was set up. And so I basically chased the wind the morning of the tournament, went straight to where that north wind was blowing in a little main lake pocket. And
Before before we actually get into like the tournament, I want to
sure.
ask you a couple of more questions, and Albert, I'll chime in.
Yes, sir.
Albert, I muted you a little bit because of the background noise, but I'll, as soon as we'll unmute you in a second. Um, you mentioned you shook off the fish. I know you mentioned you also use live scope. So when you're pre-fishing for a tournament like this, do you generally try to get, do you bring him up to the boat to see what the size are, or do you just scope them, see what they're biting, and then just not set the hook? How do you approach pre-fishing when you are like using your live scope and you mentioned shaking it off, like not actually setting the hook?
Right. So once I kind of have an understanding that my baits are going to get bit, I start bending hooks in, um, and just literally using, yeah, just getting my baits to where I can't hook them. And I use live scope, when I can. Lately, it's been a fall transition type deal, and I'll be honest, I've been catching these fish out of the dirt
Yeah.
from Rayburn to, I mean, just everywhere. It's been a fall transition thing, and I keep starting there and checking there first, and it's happening. And I've been able to turn it off a lot lately, and I prefer it, to be honest. Like in a fun fishing or a monthly deal, when I'm out doing that type of stuff, live scoping is awesome. But in a lot of these tournaments, especially when I only have one day and I've been on this shallow thing, I kind of I kind of leave it alone. And I mean, don't get me wrong, I turned it on Friday and I played with some. I threw the Andromeda a little bit by 86 baits. It's kind of like a hinkle shad. Of A lot of us have been seeing these pods of gizzard shad up shallow in these
Yeah.
lakes, and so I thought I'd try to see if I could get anything to react and follow. And I got a few really great followers, but when you only have one day, you kind of, unless they're just going nuts, you know, I think that's often a lot of famine that you're going to face. And so I just really try to go with my instinct. And when I can, if I can catch them dirt shallow, I will always 100%. Um, and that's what led into the event.
That, that
Was that mindset.
that's interesting because I know Possum Kingdom is such a deep lake. It's like a highland
Hmm.
reservoir, right? It has clear water, deep lake, which actually it's a lot of what you guys have around that area. You mentioned Canyon Lake. It's it suits Central Texas anglers a lot in that aspect. But I would think it would, like, if you have the technology of live scope, that would be your go-to, because now you have an advantage over people, over the rest of the field that may not have light scope, just knowing that you can target fish deeper, and it does give you an advantage over that. Like, we know Possum Kingdom has big bass, and most of them are going to be deep, especially
Hmm.
when we talk on docks. We're talking about bluff walls, which there's a lot on Possum Kingdom. So that's interesting. Is it that you don't feel, is it a preference that you want to fish shallow, or is it that you don't feel as comfortable using live scope?
It's a preference. 100%. If I
Interesting.
can wrangle them out of nothing feet of water and they're 2 feet from me when I hook them and I can drag them into my giant net, I'm going to do it every single time. I don't care. Um, yeah, especially in these conditions, this is the thing. We've got to start with that because it wasn't ideal. It wasn't
No,
easy to
north
sit.
wind is horrible here in
It
Texas.
wasn't easy to sit perfectly still. The lake got changed overnight, and it in my opinion, and they're just catching really big fish with live scope, like with the big bait. You need days and days.
Yeah.
I can go here in Canyon and do it, right? But I already know exactly where the bait needs to be. And I know the angles of the cast and I know how to sit. I know, well, you need to sit still. You need to be still. And I don't have a spot lock trolling motor. I have a 360 and I prefer it because I don't make noise moving,
Yeah.
electrically. Um, and so, yeah, I think it's just because I had the combination of the conditions, and we had, what I did like was those main lake docks with the wind and a little bit dirty water. Those fish love to be in the dirt. I mean,
Yeah.
they do. They want to be with their back out of the water in 75-degree water. They're happy,
They
in
use
my
that a lot
opinion.
for ambushing too, I think.
100%,
Yep.
100%, and that's what those fish were there to do. It was really, well, that's not how it started. I don't know if you want to go from the start,
Well,
and kind of
let
build
me
in.
ask let me ask
Sure.
Albert
Yes, sir.
how Albert, let me unmute you here for a second.
Right on.
How did pre-fishing work for you, Albert? I know it was tough, but what did you saw, and are you the type that likes to set the hook, or kind of same as Jacob, just kind of like shake them off, not sore lip them?
I've with very little experience with tournaments, I definitely have got a habit of wanting to set the hook on them, just to see that bait's going to work and that I can get them to the boat. Because from past experience with my last Lonestar Throwdown, I lost so many fish, and probably because it was the biggest tournament at that time that I'd ever fished in. So I guess the jitters got to me, and I felt I had something to at least prove to myself that I could at least set the hook on fish and get them in the net and get them on the board. But pre-fishing, it didn't really do so good for me. I did good Thursday. I got 2 largemouth bass and caught 1 drum, which had me fooled for sure.
Yeah, they will, especially in Possum
Yeah,
Kingdom.
yeah. That like I said, that one it's Friday. I had a big fat 0 going into Saturday, and that I'm not gonna lie that definitely got in my head for sure.
Did you think it changed the way you approached Saturday? Like it
It
affected
it,
you?
it it definitely did. I did not get my first fish until a little bit after 12, and my second fish came an hour after that, and those were the only 2 that I got.
Jacob, well, how about you? Like, let's move on to like tournament day. So we know it's a 1 day tournament.
Right.
Uh we Northwind, it's I have a hard time adjusting every time I do pre-fishing, and then you get a Northwind between days. I It's
Mm-hmm.
just
Mm-hmm.
it's tough.
Yeah.
Like it really shuts the bite down, and
Yep.
I feel like it really spreads out the fish for whatever reason.
Mm-hmm.
How did knowing that was going on? Well, let me ask you this: did you knew coming into Saturday morning lunchtime that the wind, that north wind, was going to be a factor? Do you knew it? Did you research prior day what the weather was going to be? Were you anticipating that, or did that took you by surprise? And what adjustments did you make?
Absolutely. I absolutely anticipated it. I saw it ahead of time through the weather app, and the other thing too, I camped outside where they had the event, and I camped real close to the water in a hammock. and there was no way avoiding it. You knew that that temp was dropped. Um, the wind was rocking all night, and it rocked harder than it said it was supposed to, for
Yeah,
sure,
especially in the lake.
100%. And so knowing that kind of steered me where I wanted to go, exactly where I wanted to start. Um, and I did that. I basically, right now in this time of year, we're still cooling off
Yeah,
so hard. The water's still so warm, generally speaking. So a situation like that, even though there was that much like air temperature drop, the water didn't get messed with temperature wise. It just really changed the wind direction, you know? And so that's why I chose to be on the main lake, so that I could be around good fresh water so that it wouldn't get real muddied up. Um, and then I just chased the wind and started in a little bowl that had a dock behind it in really shallow water that that had a drain from the main lake that just meandered up to it. And the thing that I really took advantage of, that I want everybody to hear, is once I saw in the rules what time we were going to be allowed to launch and what time we were going to start, and based on the time right now of sunrise, I knew how much time we were going to have in the dark. And on Friday, I found some skunk grass, and I knew that it came up to really shallow water right behind me, right in that bowl. And I knew that north wind was going to blow right into it all night long. And on my first cast, I caught the 22.
very first cast of the day.
Very first cast. I made my little pretend cast that gets the bad juju
Yeah,
away,
yeah. I was
you know,
gonna ask.
and I technically I made one cast and I got a bite and I missed a fish, and I made the second cast and I caught that fish. And um it was pretty nerve-wracking because somewhere on the cast prior, I guess, I knocked my net off my kayak. And so
And you didn't
I
even notice?
I turned my headlamp on. I see this almost 6 pounder, probably somewhere around there, come, tail walking out of the water. And I look down for my giant net. I have a net by Ego, and it's the XL extra deep. It's really big, and it wedges on the front of the Hobie. So it's just easy to grab all the time. And I look down and it's gone. And so I've
Oh
got
my
to drop down to my knees in the kayak in the Hobie and just wrestle that fish in and with the line. And I'm bad to horse my fish to me and net them real quick a lot of the time. So it was a bit of a show, but I was successful in boating it. And you know, quickly after, I went around the side of that dock, and I skipped up in there with a vibrating jig, same bait was what I started with. And that was the other thing I think's key. Having that much time in the morning in the dark with that much wind all night hitting it, it was real loud. So top water was out. It was really, really loud. And a lot of people had areas where top water was working. Um, I would have loved to. I tried in practice. I took 11th in the throwdown on Possum Kingdom the last time we were there. And I caught all those fish on a gunfish on top water throughout the day. Um, and I wanted it to work, but it just wouldn't in the day before, and then I knew that with it being that loud blowing into there all night, that there probably wouldn't be a topwater bite, but there would probably be a really good subsurface bite right on the bank, right in the mix of that skunk grass and a little bit of buckbrush. And it was just, just chatterbait deal, taking advantage of the darkness. Um, and I caught the first two that way. The one was in open water right where I was sitting, and then the other was under the dock, and that was behind me. That was an 18. And then, I just started going with the shallow dock pattern in the next pocket over, and I caught the 17 3/4. And it was another nerve-wracking moment because it was over the top of a cable, and it was sawing
Oh
on my line
man.
real bad. And the 360 kayak is 100% to blame for my ability to get to that fish super fast, and have that fish in the net before it was able to, break me off or whatever. And And about that time, I submitted those 3 fish. I checked the leaderboard. I was in fifth with like 58 inches. And then that lull hit that I think all of us felt,
Yeah.
and it just shut down. That lake went to zero. And man, I ran probably 3 miles of that shallow dock pattern. I came back to where I started in the morning and I fished the drain in front of me with the sea rig. Got a couple little bites and then I broke it off, and it was about 145. And I knew I needed to do something. I needed to do, something different and do what I'm good at. And I went back to that shallow dock pattern. I went to some docks where I'd not even looked at the day before or yet that day. And I just started looking at them at the walkways, and the walkways had shade, little bits of shade. And I found a dock that, a setup where they had basically a little riprap peninsula that came out right at the beginning of the start of the dock. And it was just deep enough, maybe a foot and a half. And at that point, just throwing a little finesse swim bait. And I caught a 16 and a half right there in that spot. And then I got that fish pictured and let go, and I made the exact same cast. And I caught that 22 right there at like 2:05 or a little after 2 o'clock. And that was my fifth fish, and obviously a very important fish.
Did you end up just catching the 5 fish, or did you caught more?
I went down a little further and I caught another one that was 15 and a half. And technically throughout the day, at some point I did catch a 13 3/4, but I wasn't sure what the minimum was. And I thought it might be 14. So I pictured it, but I just put, I didn't even think about it. To me, I was going to figure that out after the tournament expired, if that fish was legal or not, because I was focused on
Don't leave it to chance.
better fish than that. And so I did picture it, and had it in case we needed it. Found out we could use a 12-inch minimum fish. So I guess technically I did catch 6 scoreable fish throughout the event. But pretty much the 5 in there that mattered were the 5 that I needed. I fished pretty clean, I'd say. Got a few bites on the chatterbait that I didn't hook up on. But as far as like the shallow dock pattern throughout the day, I didn't miss any fish. I didn't lose any fish. It's pretty boring, to be honest, throughout that day because of that long lull.
Yeah.
But it is what it is,
Albert, I'm not going to torture you by asking you how it went today, because you already talked about that. But
no,
do you have any questions for Jacob as far as how he catch him and,
I guess I guess one question I got is, did you catch any on a jig? Apparently it sounds like you didn't catch any on just a regular casting jig.
No, sir. Just a vibrating jig in the morning in the dark and on the dock, and then a finesse swim bait weedless on the docks.
Okay, I'm gonna say
throughout
my
the day.
fish came. Yeah, my 2 fish came on a finesse swim bait, little round ball jig head, but in 10 to 15 feet of water.
Right.
Just right where I'm calling it the catch point of the slope, right where it starts at the edge of it, where it drops off into the river channel.
Absolutely. One thing that I shared with some of the guys, what I do this often is, like, I'll go to a lake in practice and in the event throughout the day. I'll look around and I'll look and see how people are fishing the lake. And then I won't do that.
Yeah.
I just won't. I'll just, you could tell me that you're going to win, and I'll literally not go do that, just simply so that I can maybe get on some fish that, haven't been pressured in that way. And if I can make that work, then I'm gonna,
And speaking from experience, I think Possum Kingdom is one of those lakes that it'll make a fool out of you, in the sense that I don't know why it doesn't seem like, more than any other lake that I fish in Texas. And again, I'm not an expert. I'm not any of this Russ Snyder, Christine Fisher who travels the country. But speaking just strictly about Texas, when you compare it to Lake Fairfield, Lake Fork, those, even if the bite is not consistent, the pattern is consistent. But for whatever reason, Possum Kingdom, whether it's because of the size and it's whatever it is, it just doesn't seem like it's that the pattern is that consistent. Even the bite is not that consistent. I mentioned this on the podcast before. You know, traditionally you would say shallow water, early morning before sun gets high, top water, stuff like that. And I've known from experience, not just fishing on tournaments, but just fishing recreationally. Possum Kingdom is by far one of my favorite lakes, along with Lake Fork and Fairfield. Um, it seems like it's you could throw, bluebird skies, no wind, throw a top water, and it has happened to me, and catch a 22 incher, which is
Definitely.
like traditionally what you would think this is not going to work. Don't even bother
Right.
throwing it
Right.
unless you are like. By the way, shout out to J.R. Maccabee who can catch anything on top water. By the way, saying what's up, fellas? Congrats to Jake. J.R. Maccabee, actually winner of the not last year but the year before, is Lonestar Throwdown with top water. So it. I really feel like Possum Kingdom. It's like it can just make a fool out of you. It's it's such different from any other lake. Even
Mhm.
lakes
Definitely made
that
a
you
fool out of me.
compare. A what?
I said it definitely made a fool out of me.
And you both fish Canyon Lake, right? Canyon. I know there's two lakes that are kind of similar name. Canyon Lake, and then what's the other one?
Canyon Lake and Choke Canyon. Choke
Choke
Canyon's
Canyon is the
further
other one.
south.
So you both fish Canyon Lake, right?
Mm-hmm.
How
Correct.
does
Yes,
that
sir.
compare? Because I feel like Canyon Lake, I haven't faced it, but looking at pictures, talking to people, it feels like it's very similar to
Somewhat.
Possum Kingdom.
Somewhat. Though very different because Canyon's a Corps of Engineer lake, so you don't have any residential docks whatsoever.
Okay.
Um, it's
Correct.
also deep and canyon and rocky, and it's the upper end is very much so loaded with hydrilla, and the bottom end is rocky and has brush piles and fish attractors, really clear water, smallmouth. Kind of like Stillhouse. I think Stillhouse and Canyon are pretty similar.
Your house
You
really with
know,
all that grass?
yeah, very
So
similar.
Canyon has a lot of grass as well.
Oh yeah,
All right.
At the north
oh
end
yeah.
for sure.
Say, I'm sorry. What'd you say?
I said at the north end for sure. But then there
Yes,
are
sir.
some pockets that I know I've run across at the south end of the lake. But
Yes,
like I
sir.
said, majority of it is concentrated up north.
Absolutely. Yes, sir. And no docks. You know. So you, whereas like Possum Kingdom has a lot of like clay and sand that's mixed in. So when you get that wind and it gets stirred up on those docks, those fish like shallow cranking and stuff with blades, man, on those shallow docks, that bite can be so good. And you just can't really come across that situation on Canyon. Um,
Mhm.
but Possum Kingdom offers, I mean, other than a ton of hydrilla somewhere that I don't know, man, I don't know, it could be somewhere, but other than that, it's very versatile. It's got a lot. It's got a lot of offshore stuff, um, a lot of brush pile fishing, a lot of stick ups. I love
Yeah.
that brushy stick up stuff when the topwater bite's good. Um, and I just happened to be opportunistic with a little bit of that skunk grass that I found. It wasn't something that I really go around targeting. I just happened to find it with the sea rig on accident on Friday, and I knew based on how shallow it was that with the wind blowing right in there, that vibrating jig bite in the morning would probably be really good. And it proved to be a big, huge, I mean, a huge part that for 22 and 18 came doing that. So I owe a lot to that and just that shallow cover dock fishing, skipping, whatever.
And I wanted to ask you a little bit about that because I hardly find any grass on Possum Kingdom. There are some
Mm-hmm.
spots, especially depending
Mm-hmm.
on the water level. By the way, let me ask you, gentlemen, how was the water level? Because I know it's dropped recently, but I don't know if it was back to normal with the rain or if it's still considerably dropped in Possum Kingdom by the tournament day.
From at least my observation, when I last checked it before I left up to the lake, I was reading the lake level capacity at about 94%. So even when I got up there and looked at the docks, they were anywhere from 3.5 to 4 feet low, based, just based on the observation.
So let me ask you this, Jacob. What when you say skunk grass, and I'm trying to Google it because I haven't heard that term. What are you referring to? Is that the name of it? It's just what we
I
call it
don't
in
know. I'm
Texas.
not sure. We call it that here on Canyon and wherever I see it. It's just a shallow, submergent vegetation that smells real skunky, smells real pungent. You know what I'm talking about?
I know
Um,
exactly what that stuff is. It's
and
nasty.
it's usually nothing. But when you don't have anything on,
Yeah.
then they're gonna be on that, and that's all they've got. And so it's just they're just gonna use what they have, and um, I feel like that grass, I was pulling it up the day before and it had mud in it. And I thought, man, this grass is going to hold a lot of heat. And I don't think you need it yet right now with the temps still being pretty high. But I was like, they're probably going to feed in it with the north wind and they're going to sit, they'd rather sit in that pillowy style grass than on rock or just brush because the brush is mixed in with it, and its main lake, so it's getting a lot of fresh oxygen from coming all the way across the lake from with that north wind. So I just figured it was gonna just position them right there to be there. So um, that's and yeah, like I said, it's just a grass. It doesn't even grow, but maybe a foot, maybe 6 inches. It's always brown and just doesn't look like what you're looking for. But when that's all you can find, they'll be in it in the morning in the dark.
I
That's
guess I've
interesting.
got
Like,
the.
go ahead, Albert.
I was gonna say, sorry, Armando. I was gonna say the skunk grass that I've come across, I always seem to snag it on a crankbait and always seem to be quite lush and green. But that odor, ugh.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I usually don't. I don't target it most of the time, but I find when I see it like there, and then I just probed it with a vibrating jig that morning.
What
It paid
uh
off.
what do you think? What color patterns, if you don't mind me asking, right? Because I know, as
Basic.
anglers, we don't want to give too much of the juice, but what
No,
pa- anglers or
nothing special. White, white on white jackhammer, light, real light. The weight, the weight matters on the depth and the cover, and you got to. It's gonna change everywhere you go. It was a 3/8. It's light, um, just white, and it was solely like in the dark. And right at first light, and as soon as the sun comes up, you probably need to. If you're gonna keep plugging away with that, you better switch over green pumpkin, wire green pumpkin, in my opinion. Um, it wasn't one of those lakes that's going to give you a couple hours of chatterbait bite in the morning. It's not, or not right now. I don't know. In my opinion, maybe if it stayed overcast and windy like that, probably it might stay longer, another hour or so. But I think as it gets brighter, you need to camouflage that bait in those conditions that I'm talking about with all the pressure and everything like that. That's what everything funnels down to that, with all these particulars in the color choice and whatnot.
so
Uh,
that's
the,
an
the
that's an
other bait,
interesting point. Go ahead, Albert.
the other bait that I threw throughout the day is just a natural shad pattern, colored little swim bait, soft plastic paddle tail.
So you mentioned something that was interesting. You said during early parts of morning you go with one color, and then as the day gets brighter, you switch to what color?
I
Like,
just
what's the
try to
difference in color?
camouflage the bait as much as possible and try to match the water or match the bottom, basically, or with the combination of the two is what I try to do with the color of whatever bait it is.
That's interesting because I know a lot of times we think of like, well, we have to go with something that stands out, but you're actually saying camouflage it
Yeah.
with is it because Possum Kingdom is a clear lake? Like, I wouldn't think you would do that on a muddy lake or stain lake, but we're talking about that using that strategy because the water is so clear, right?
Well, it was dirty. It was very
Oh, it
dirty.
was dirty. Oh, yeah.
It was
Very,
dirty, but it's very pressured,
very.
and the sun was out. It was bright, and I'm picking on a shade line, but everywhere around the environment right there, it's super bright. 2 o'clock in the
Okay.
afternoon. So at that point, with that much pressure and that much noise all day long, and boaters and everything like that, that's when I really want to match the water and the bottom and the environment. I want the bait to camouflage in. Um, and there are all kinds of things that we do with these baits, to make them, be a little different. You can do all kinds of things with the blade. You can put blades on these baits and different types of blades and stuff like that. And just really trying to get in and get these baits to kick good and come slow through the water column too. Nothing about the way I was retrieving those baits was fast at
That's a
all.
good point.
Very slow crawl. One thing that I wish that I had time to do other than live scope around with a big bait is shallow crank. I would have loved to shallow crank with like a medium dive and flat sided silent balsa crankbait is what Catching Concepts. I'll be honest.
Yeah.
One of their baits I would love to have cranked every shallow dock pole in my sight, but I just didn't have time and I didn't have confidence, so couldn't do it.
When you're talking about using the jackhammer, which I agree with you. I think sometimes as anglers, the biggest mistake we make, or one of the biggest mistakes, is we use that chatterbait too quick. We speed it up too fast, and I think where especially the jackhammer, where it shines, it's not too slow, but because you need minimum speed for that blade to actually tick and it hit the head of the jig, versus the original chatterbait or some other chatterbait that's not tied directly to the jig head.
Right,
You need to move it fast in order to click. But in the jackhammer's case, um, you don't need to move it too fast in
right,
order to have that clicking sound
absolutely.
that it, from what I understand, it also imitates the crawfish. So when crawfish are being under attack, they'll have a little clicking sound when they
Sure,
just snap to get out of the way.
right.
And that's something I think that's one of the biggest reasons why jackhammers, and not only jackhammers, by the way, for those that are listening and don't know this, now and I'm going on a rabbit hole here, but so the pattern on the jackhammer, which is really the blade tied directly to the jig head,
Mm-hmm.
that pattern has expired. And that's why you see Seaman now came off with a new uh, chatterbait, which is called
Mm-hmm.
the Evo, which is
Mm-hmm.
essentially pretty much, I'm not going to say a carbon copy of the jackhammer, but it's very similar. And the reason why is they just lost that pattern expires. So now everybody can make a jackhammer
Right,
if they want to.
Separated from
right,
evergreen.
So now it's the thing is like, well, now that everybody can be a jammer, we have to come up with something different.
right,
Not different, but call it something different.
right,
But that I think that's very key. So that's why you're gonna see now the price of the jackhammers and even the Evo, I think it's like $5 cheaper than the jackhammer, which essentially is the
mm-hmm.
same technology. It's just tied directly to the jig head.
Right,
But enough of that, enough of that rabbit hole. I think, like I mentioned, the biggest mistake that we make is we crank it up too hard.
yeah.
What speed do you usually crank it, especially for this tournament? Did you found yourself cranking it a little bit slower or a little bit faster than you used to? Do you use a regular, what type of, do you use a specific reel
Mm-hmm.
speed to make sure to keep you disciplined on how fast you're
Mm-hmm.
moving that chatterbait?
I basically throw it on a Corrado DC, a 150 XG with a
It's a nice one, yeah.
Hog Tech handle on a Dobbins. It's a 736 glass. I don't know if everybody can read that, but it's a 736 glass with 20-pound Invisex. And
Heavy
on
line.
on that setup the other
What
day.
speed do you use on that reel?
Oh, sorry. It's an 8-to-1. It's an XG.
Oh, really?
Wow.
So you really go
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love being able to take up line really fast.
once you get the bite.
I love being able to control fish really, really well. And a lot of the time, well, it's still like even with it being super fast. The other day, what I was doing with it, I wasn't straight retrieving the bait. I was I was just popping it with my wrist. I was kind of like
Yeah.
miniature yo-yoing it
Yeah.
in like dirt, shallow water, and just letting it sit in the strike zone. Hopping it like a trap. Same thing. It's just, and I would like to have done that. I would probably rather if I had more time, but the way that skunk grass was, it was like muddy and mixed in with little sticks and like brush. And a treble hook bait's going to give you more problems like that unless you can find like stretch of it where it's real clean, like the grass is by itself and you can kind of memorize maybe like lanes or like. But when you don't know that, that's why the jackhammer is so good, or a chatterbait in general, because it can come through all that. And you're just, yeah, you're able to hop it and kill it and hop it and kill it and just freestyle it. And some of it was real erratic. I'd hop it up and real turn real quick, 2 or 3 times and let it sit there on the bottom, and just until you get bit, and then I started realizing I was getting bit by doing less, by just letting it be on the bottom and hopping it up
Yeah.
real quick, but not real high, and then just letting it fall and hopping it up, letting it fall, but real short little hops. And that's what changes all the time. A chatterbait is a fun bait to cover water with and reel fast on certain lakes. It's like good hydrilla lakes. You can go fast. Decker's a great place where you can really go fast with a chatterbait and catch them good. But over the years, as a lot of people have figured out how good a chatterbait is, I think
Yeah.
now it takes a little bit more skill and a little bit more freestyle with the bait to catch a lot of these fish. And that little yo-yo hopping it deal is a really good way to get them to bite when they really don't want to.
That is a great point because I remember when that chatterbait came out with, especially with the jackhammer, we had a different sound with it. I
Right,
mean, you just have to throw it and retrieve it. It
right.
was it was a cheat code.
That's right.
Um, I remember going to Fairfield before it
Hmm.
closed and going up the lanes where you're not supposed to go, and I didn't know. I thought I could go up there. Never got in trouble, thank God. Uh, but for those fish that unpressured bass, and they were huge bass, by the way, that hardly, because you're not supposed to fish there, right? They
Right.
they not used to seeing a chatterbait. I mean, it was just stupid. You mean just throw in it, any retrieval on a chatterbait will do. It doesn't matter.
Yes,
But when
sir.
you look at, and I think you hit the nail on the head, when you, now that they're getting used to that, and now that that patent expired and more companies are going to make a carbon copy of the jackhammer, at least
Right.
with that design of the blade and the jig head,
Hmm.
that is going to get even more, even more familiar with it. And I think a little bit of juice that I've learned, and for those that are listening and watching, that this is, I mean, this is key, especially when they're feeding on crawfish. You throw that jig, jackhammer or bladed jig, whatever you want to call it, and you let it sit and you work it as you would with a jig.
Yeah, you worm it. I say it a lot. You call it worming it.
Yes, because when you think about it, when a crawfish is under attack, they're gonna snap their tail
Right.
and make that little jump, and that
Sure.
that snap creates that clicking sound.
That's
So
right.
you throw a jackhammer, you have a bass nosing it, and all of a sudden you work that tip, and that blade is gonna create mimic that exact
Yeah.
clicking sound that
Yeah.
crawfish does. And
Right.
more often than not, if you put it on the right, on the right spot,
That's right.
they can't help
That's
themselves.
right.
They
Same
can't
way with
help
shallow
themselves.
cranking.
Yes.
Same way with that shallow cranking, with that catching, like those catching concepts crankbaits and Andrew Dixon's
Yeah.
crankbaits, all those awesome sweet balsas. They deflect so well off of hardcover dock poles and brush and rocks and crap down there, and it's like the same exact thing. It triggers that instinctive response out of them to just chase it and eat it. You know,
And
so
Albert, I've
to
been
add a
ignoring you there, but go ahead.
Oh
Sorry.
no, I was gonna add a little bit to what Jacob said on shallow cranking. On one of my pre-fishing days, that's what I got all my fish on, the drum and my two bass, and the it was a mid diving crankbait with
hmm
just a round bill, and with I a little bit more about me is I don't like fishing shallow. I'm kind of the opposite of what you like to fish, Jacob. Is if I can fish 15 feet or deeper, that's what I'm going to go for. But
Right.
this lake and this time of year told me I got to fish shallow, and I was hoping that my fish tournament day would have been shallow, but they weren't. But they the two I caught pre-fishing were in all three fish were in the same well, two of them were all in the same general area in 5 feet of water or less in stick ups,
Yeah.
which I was really, really shocked by that. But that right there, as you mentioned earlier with the humble pie, is that I got served a bit of that, and that
Yes.
opened my eyes a bit for shallow water fish.
Definitely. That was
You see,
one thing that I learned in practice. I could get bit on the docks, and then I could also get bit on those clumps of buckbrush that had a little bit more depth on them. And they would be just like one here, one there. They'd be like on the end of a point or like around a corner, and it'd be like 5 feet or 6 feet instead of two or three. And I'd
Mhm.
flip that bait in there that I was getting bit and shaking them off on. I was getting bit on a lot of those casts like that. And I tried to run that whole concept during the tournament, and I didn't catch a single one doing that. And the pressure told me that because they were clockwork the day before on where they were. And the combination, really, the combination of pressure and those conditions with all that wind moving all that water through there, that like along the main lake, it really kind of concentrated them into those like little bowls and those little wind-blown spots that had that combination of grass and bait and brush and really, really shallow. And I think it just moved them off of those like isolated pieces of cover that were kind of bare. They just didn't have a lot to slow down the water on them. And I think those fish left a lot of those spots. And or they probably also got a lot of pressure in the early morning. And by the time I got to them, boats had, at least troller motored right over them and through them and stuff like that. And so it's hard to that's what makes it so hard on us in a kayak is, you know, um, you share or anybody in a boat sharing all that water with other very serious tournament anglers. It's going to have a result like that.
I agree.
we got a question for Jay on Markov. He says, Jake, are you changing trailers or are you bladed jig per situation, or do you have a certain one you're using all the time?
So I'm real simple with the vibrating jig. I'm not somebody who goes all out and fishes it a lot. I just fish it very situationally, and I'm real simple with it, and I pretty much only throw a jackhammer, and I only throw a Zaco trailer on it, and all I do is just
Those are
mess with
good.
the weight and the color, and I rarely even mess with the blade colors. Um, every now and then I'll kind of get into that, but I keep it real simple, and yeah, I just keep it to a jackhammer. I don't really switch the blades out. The only thing I really do is just change the color and change, the weight from usually a 3/8 or a half. I think the 3/4 and the ounce and a quarter are great baits, and they're going to shine at a point in time. But most of the time, a 3/8 and a half get it done,
Yeah.
And I
I don't think
love
I don't think they're still in a quarter, 1/4, right?
you know, I thought I
Maybe
was
maybe
using a
not.
quarter ounce. I thought I was using a quarter ounce, and I looked it up on Tackle Warehouse, and I can't find them anymore.
No, I don't
In
think
the
they make them in a 1/4 ounce.
I maybe not. I could have sworn I used to buy a few quarter ounce, and that I looked for the lightest ones that I had with me on Friday night, and I just was able to find one that was white on white and one that was green pumpkin. Um, and so I didn't switch during the day like to the green pumpkin color. I just used white on white in the morning, and then I put it down, and that was it. I didn't try to keep using it. Once the sun came up, I could tell those fish really evacuated out of that really shallow water, and it just the chatterbait bite was done for me.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
Albert, I interrupted you there for a second, Albert. What were you saying?
Oh no, I was going to add it's if it's irrelevant. But the jackhammer, I've got very limited use with that. I can say I've only caught one fish on it, but the two colors I definitely prefer is well, the brand is it's the Z-Man Cross Eyes, just for the little more peace of mind without it getting snagged. But
Mm-hmm.
the mouse and green pumpkin are the two colors that I prefer, and the only two trailers I throw on mine are the 6 cents. Oh goodness, the Juggle Minnow and the Hog Farmer Spunk Shad.
Yeah,
Those are good. I think my go-to
those are
trailer
money.
for the jackhammer
Mhm.
is the what is it called, the oh my god, I'm drawing a blank, KVD, the striking rage tail, the like the twin tails. I
Mhm.
mean the
Mm-hmm.
action, if you ever throw it on clear water, you watch the action, because every now and then it'll dart by itself, like straight
Mm.
retrieval, and a boom, it'll
That'll hunt.
dart to the left, it'll dart to the right. um, I know a lot of people are against this, but I actually have found success on the paddle tail ones. And a lot of people say
Really?
like, "Oh, they don't use the paddle tail on it," but
Interesting.
I've found success on the paddle tail. It does lift it up a little bit off the water. I mean, not off the water. It rides a little bit higher
Right.
than it would with a Seiko, but the Seiko is also a great one. And also, like, I'll bite off the head of a fluke, like a seaman fluke.
Mm-hmm.
You put that; those are good too,
Mm-hmm.
especially when you
That
get that green chartreuse tail. Those are money. The
yeah, that
menace is another one that J.R. Markaby says. I can't remember who makes the menace. Uh,
Rage Tail.
Rage Tail, yeah, Rage Tail
Mm-hmm.
Menace. That's the one he was
Yep.
talking about. Yeah, so that's the one I'm referring. Those are all good. George Wheeler says, "Come through grass better with the paddle tail." I think so. Like, I've had situations where paddle tails. I'll throw it when I nothing else is biting. If the menace, the uh, twin tail is not working, then I'll go to a Seiko. And if that's not working, then I'll go to a paddle tail, which usually means it's the water is a lot stainier, muddier, and it just needs
Mm-hmm.
something more, to a little bit extra vibration on it. Uh, JR Markaby says you can rig it vertically or horizontally depending on the cover you're fishing, and it will come through better. That's true. Yeah,
Right.
that is very true. All right, Albert, I've had you for an hour, so I really appreciate it. Jacob as well. I thank you so much for taking the time. Um, Before I do, if there's anybody watching or watching on the live show that has any questions, throw it in now before we wrap this up. But in the meantime, Jacob, I want to give you a chance to shout out anybody you want to shout out, plug any companies, anybody
Definitely.
that helps you.
Yes, sir. No Bad Days Kayak, for sure. And JR's over there. They can get you right on all your kayak accessories, kayaks themselves. They're a Hobie dealer, and they're a great shop. They have great service. They have great locations too. They're located in the ski ranch in San Marcos, and such a great place to go like test a boat out. And JR is just such a wizard with kayaks. He's been doing it for so long. He can repair all kinds of stuff, and it's just a great place. And then also Outdoor Alphas in San Antonio. They're a tackle store. Sam, he's the owner. There's some great guys over there. A lot of guys with a lot of knowledge working over there. Really good selection of reels and all kinds of tackle as well. And so, other than that, just my friends and family, everybody that's supporting me along the way. Um, yeah, thanks to all of them.
And
Absolutely.
one more question, Jacob. I know the season is wrapping up. What is your plans for the end of the season, and what's 2024 looking for you as
Yes,
far as
sir.
tournament goes?
So right now we've got the Native Power Hour tournament coming
Yep.
up. Um, gonna gonna watch that one. See what the sign up, what the angler entry looks like. Um, gonna more than likely utilize that to see if we can um, win some money and also get another day of practice for
Yep.
the upcoming TXKBL Classic. Super stoked for that. Sitting in first in AOY. And we're getting to repeat where we had the Classic last year, where I was fortunate to take the win. So excited to go back to Fork. Um, and yeah, try to defend the title and defend the belt to everybody.
Oh yeah.
Everybody sitting at home. Just wanted to remind y'all we're
Yeah,
about
you
to
have
have
to
some.
be very annoying with about holding that belt, by the way. That's the rules.
we're we're gonna have some fun on Lake Fork, everybody. I hope everybody is excited for one hell of a tournament. I think Lake Fork is gonna go off. Um, And so just excited for that. And then to conclude the year, we'll have like the Toys for Toads tournament on
Yeah.
Fayette. And then we'll get started in 2024 with TXKBL as well as looking to compete more seriously this year on the national trails. Um, Multiple trail holders, BASS, Hobie, as many as we can do. That's the goal.
Yeah. By the way, I forgot that's one thing I wanted to mention in the intro. We're talking to Albert is the Bassmaster Kayak Series. I mean, big shout out to Steve Owens. We see the changes in Bassmaster Kayak Series now that Steve Owens has taken over for a full year or almost a full season. The schedule came out versus we usually get the schedule for Bassmaster sometime. We would have gotten it sometime next year in February, but it's not even November. He already has it out. Great schedule. I know a lot of people are complaining that it's not diverse enough. I know some of the Midwest anglers, Wisconsin, Missouri, Arkansas, kind of that area would have liked to see a trail there. I know, Steve Owens is trying to build this, and I know it's the fifth season, but in reality, it's more like the first season of Bassmaster because now, we have somebody that's running the trail versus it was kind of like the headless horseman for a few years where it was kind of rotating who was actually running it. And there was no consistency. So in a lot of ways, this is kind of like year two of Bassmaster Kayak Series coming up next year. I'm hoping that it keeps growing so they can expand. I know the West Coast anglers are very upset there's no trails going over there. I hope at some point we get trails in the West Coast, but I know they have to show up. I mean, if you have a trail out there in running in conjunction with the local trail and the national trail, whether it's OBBOS, Bassmaster, is only pulling 50 anglers, and the local trail in the West Coast, which is running in conjunction, is pulling over 100 anglers, that's a slap in the face to these national trails. I mean, you can't have that happen and then complain that you're not getting a trail. Like the anglers have to step up. And maybe it's the question of these national trails building a community that will entice them to, join the national trail. I think there's still Steve Owens hasn't really decided if it's going to be minimum 3 to qualify for the AOY or 4. My plea to this is like for us Texas anglers, we're better off if it's 4 because we have 2 on our backyard, Caddo and Possum Kingdom. That really gives us an advantage. But I feel like if they put a minimum of 4 trails to qualify for the AOY, you're really annihilating anybody from the Northeast coast because they only have the Susquehanna and then everything else is a minimum of 12-hour drive. And you're asking them to do that 3 times.
All right.
You have the Susquehanna once, then you're asking them, okay, do this 3 more times and drive up to like, any one of the Texas would be 24-hour drive for anybody in the Northeast. I think that's a lot to ask for. And although it benefits us as Texas anglers to have a minimum of 4, because that means we only have to do one really big drive
Right.
to that area. And it's Possum Kingdom, Caddo, then Guntersville, which is not horrible. It's what, 10, 12-hour drive. When we're talking about national trails, that's not
No.
crazy.
Right.
And then that would be the big sacrifice will be not Possum Kingdom, Susquehanna, which that's about a 24-hour drive. And then about an 18 to 20-hour drive would be Murray, South Carolina. So, I mean, I'm hoping it stays with 3, just for the sake of those anglers out there in the Northeast that really want to rate. You really want a fair shot at competing for AOY. But we'll see. They got smart people making those decisions, so let's trust the process on this one. Albert, before we close up, any words you want to share. Anyone you want to plug? Any famous last
Um,
words?
no famous last words, but I definitely want to give a shout out and a big thank you to Fish Tackle Marine. Um, my two fish. I just bought a brand new rod and reel combo that performed well for me for tournament day. So a big thank you to Will Laws over at Fish Tackle Marine here in San Antonio, and a thank you and shout out to my fishing friend Max Holiday, who's I definitely enjoy fishing with, and every time I can get on the water with him, it's always a good time, and we're always learning from each other. And maybe a big thank you to my employer for giving me a job and the ability to fish when I can.
Heck yeah, that's your biggest sponsor right there. Right?
It truly is. It truly is.
All right, gentlemen, thank you so much for taking the time to join us again. Jacob, congratulations. We wish you the best
Thank
in
you.
the
Congratulations again, Jacob.
yeah,
Thank
in
you,
the
Albert.
Texas KBL. I'm not gonna say in the native power bass power hour because I'm fishing that one. So, but no, seriously, good luck on all of the events and looking
Thank you.
forward to share the water next year with you. Well, actually, looking forward to share the water in Lake Fork, the bass power hour.
Yes,
And
sir.
Albert, same to
Likewise.
you, man. We hope to meet on the water pretty soon.
Yes, sir. Time will time will tell.
All right, for those out there listening and watching, thank you for tuning in. Remember, you can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Bass Kayak and Beers. If you're listening on our MP3 format, whether it's Spotify, Apple Podcast, give us a thumbs up or a 5-star review if you don't mind. That would really appreciate. Help us with the growth of the podcast. Have a great day, everyone. Wear your PFDs and stay safe.
Good night, guys.
Peace.
Good night.